This is the voice of Wichita Falls on NewsTalk 1290.
Welcome once again to the voice of Wichita Falls. I'm Mike Hendren. In the studio with me, Henry Florsheim, President and CEO of the Wichita Falls Chamber of Commerce. Henry, welcome back.
Good morning.
Good morning. And also with us today, a downtown business owner and a longtime friend of mine, Trey Sralla, co-owner of Eddie Hills Fun Cycles here in Wichita Falls. Trey, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. So we've been talking on the program for the last several weeks about the bond issues. And the big one that seems to be on everybody's mind is the Downtown Municipal Center. This is the big part of the bond, Proposition D, correct?
That's correct.
$77 million, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the big one. And I want to talk a little bit today about how that impacts the city overall, as far as what does it do to help us with business growth and business expansion in the city? How can that be a contributing factor to seeing business growth, and how does it affect downtown businesses as well? So, Henry, let's get into that a little bit. The Municipal Center, $77 million project. We're going to vote in a little less than a month now. The election comes up. Early voting starts here in just a couple of weeks. And how will supporting that bond, if that should pass and it's built, how does that help business in Wichita Falls?
Here's the situation. We've talked about this on previous shows. Our workforce is shrinking.
Right.
The only demographic in Wichita Falls that's grown over the past 15 or 20 years is 55 and up. And so those folks are either retired or they're hoping to retire in the near future. And we're losing every other age bracket underneath. And so as those folks retire, we're not having people move into the workforce to replace them. Okay. We've got hundreds of jobs available today at our largest employers that they cannot fill because they can't find the workforce. And so if we expect to grow as a community, that's our number one challenge, is how do we increase our talent pool? And one of the ways we can do that is become a city where more people are willing to stay and where more people are willing to move to. And so that means things like quality of life, family activities, recreation, downtown are important. If you talk to some of our manufacturers that try to recruit engineers to move here from Dallas, for example, it's a very difficult sell to make because there's just not the variety of things to do here and the environment that a lot of those people from bigger cities are interested in. And I'm not saying we want to be Dallas. We obviously don't, but we want to be a much better Wichita Falls. And so if we improve downtown, if we get more things to do down there, more places to live, more restaurants, more bars, more shops, more attractions, and so on, it will not only provide a better quality of life for the people that are here already, but it'll give people from out of town more reasons to want to be here, whether we're talking about visiting or if we're talking about somebody moving here. So Proposition D would build a consolidated municipal center downtown, okay, between 5th and 3rd Street, between Scott and Ohio, right by the tracks, and that's the city's preferred site. If it's built there, that's going to put 400 to 500 new people a day within blocks of all the downtown businesses that we love, like Casa Manana and I Duck Coffee. And in fact, it's right across the street from McBride's Steakhouse and Pat's Drive-In. And so think about what that means to those businesses and those families that have opened those businesses on a bet that our community is going to provide enough support to them that they can stay open and thrive. And so those employees right now that are at Memorial Auditorium, the police station, fire station number 1, some people tell me they're already downtown. But come on, that's not the walkable district that we're talking about. And so putting them within a couple of blocks of all that's going on, it improves what's happening downtown. It gives more businesses and entrepreneurs and investors the idea that, hey, I can go downtown and be successful too. And as we continue to upgrade our downtown and provide more options, and those people will help bolster the businesses that are there, then the outsiders see more, right? If we pass D and G, if we streetscape that 9-block area downtown and we put 400 more people within walking distance of everything down there, it strengthens everything about downtown, including the idea that more people will open businesses there, build residential developments there, and so on, giving us that district that we can build an image around. And then it helps us recruit people to move here. It helps us keep people here because they'd want to be here more, therefore enlarging the workforce, back to the original point of my conversation.
Right.
And as the workforce grows, our companies have a better chance of filling these jobs. With 200 jobs that we could fill today if we had the workforce, that's just like recruiting a company to move here and hiring 200 new people. All we got to do is find the people, and there will be more money in this economy.
Right. Well, you mentioned image. Image, of course, is huge. And for all those of us that work downtown and downtown a lot, understand downtown is a very safe place to be. But you put a police station, the fire department, city services right down that in the area, and that helps that image. You put it right across from the impact, basically, where we've put so much money into developing that part of the city, and you add that much more. You add that security level. People that come into town, they see this brand new facility of all the city services are right there, right by the impact. The impact drawing crowds to town, drawing events to town.
Right.
It's a great image thing because that's all about image. Because people don't know unless they come here and see. They don't know what we have.
It creates a great first impression. Right. It absolutely does. And I'm glad you mentioned the safety issue because there have been two comments that people have given me in the 4.5 years I've been here about why they don't want to go downtown. And one is the perception that it's not safe.
Yeah.
Well, putting the police station right there would address that. And then Proposition G would light up the entire district, would provide consistent lighting. So even late at night, it would feel more safe. And then the other that people have told me is that there's a parking problem. There's not really, but for some reason, people still think they need to park right in front of the business they're going to, even though when they visit another city, they don't feel that way. They're okay walking a few blocks. But the city manager has told me that those hundreds of parking spots that would be at the new Municipal Center would be available to the public to use as well. And so nights and weekends when the building's not fully staffed, you come in downtown to go to the farmer's market or a festival or just to go, then you'd have hundreds of new parking spots down there. So two perception problems completely solved right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Trey, Eddie Hills Fun Cycles has been downtown for over 50 years now.
1966.
Yeah. So a long time.
52 years now.
And you've seen a lot of changes in downtown in 50 years. And you've been with the company how long now?
25 years.
So in 25 years, you've seen a lot of changes downtown.
Yeah.
Of all the things that have happened downtown, from your perspective, what's been the most positive change up to this point that you see downtown?
Well, I've seen the change in the infrastructure. I mean, the change that downtown is revitalizing, and it is slow. It's a slow process. It doesn't happen overnight,
right?
But with the trail system being built, the impact being there, and drawing groups. You have the Hotter and Hell building down that's over on my end on North Scott, north of the river, and that sort of thing. And when you see things like that, those changes, that infrastructure starts to grow, you just see more traffic. Because what we have lost downtown is we've lost some office space. Used to downtown was a much busier during the week with office people. Well, there's a lot of offices now that have moved away from there. They've moved close, like doctors' offices have moved close to the hospital. A lot of attorneys and that sort of thing were downtown, and they don't seem to be as much down there. So now with the business, with the commercial part of it coming in rather than the office, I think that's just a revitalization of that area.
And the changes that we're going to see obviously there's going to be a tremendous change having that there, but there's always the possibility, Henry, that this thing doesn't pass. I mean, these are 7 independent propositions on the ballot. You can vote for or against either one you want to. So if this thing doesn't happen, now obviously we've got one of the other propositions on the ballot is some repairs to Memorial Auditorium, some upgrades there, but there's a lot of structural stuff wrong with that building that's not addressed in these bonds. In this current series of bond issues, it's not addressed at all. That's going to have to be a totally separate issue should this not pass. There's some things that are going to happen there. What is there a plan B for downtown and the rest of the city should this particular proposition not pass?
So here's what'll happen. The initial reason why Proposition D was developed conceptually in the first place is because of facilities issues at Memorial Auditorium, at City Hall, at the police station, and at Fire Station Number 1. Okay, and I'll use the fire and police stations as an example. Both of those buildings need new roofs. And so say the two roofs together, and I'm making this number up, but say they're going to cost $1 million total for these two. If this bond passes, the city would intend to sell those two buildings. And if it sells the two buildings, it would not have to pay for new roofs, right? Take it off of our hands. You put it back on the property tax rolls. Somebody else has to be responsible for that at that point. However, if Prop D doesn't pass and the police department and the fire department are forced to stay in those 50-plus-year-old facilities, then they're going to have to come up with the money somewhere to replace those roofs. The city's going to have to do that. And the city's budget's very tight. And y'all know this. And the only place that money could come from if we don't pass some sort of financing mechanism like these bonds is from the city's general fund. And you know what else comes from the general fund? Money for parks and streets, money for raises for fire and police and city employees. And so if you're one of those that's interested in police pay and you're concerned about how this could adversely affect the police, well, think about it like this. If we have to fix those roofs and all the other fixes that need to be made to modernize those facilities, there's not going to be money for anything, let alone raises and fixing the streets the way we need to do it. And so really, this helps us in a lot of ways. It helps us advance police pay and try to get it back up to at least the regional average. You know, we're expecting the city to hire the best and the brightest so they can provide services to us. And we're forcing them to work in buildings that leak, where police professionals are having to work out of storage closets because they've outgrown the building, and just all these other issues. And so plan B, to stay where we're at, is to take money away from other things we want to do for simple fixes we've got to make, like new roofs and fixing cracks and walls.
The upkeep,
Yeah, exactly.
Well, plan B is always, I've been involved in bonds for years with the school district, and you hear that. What's the plan B? Well, the plan B is we have to regroup and go redo the whole thing. You don't go with a bond because you're just shooting for the moon. You go with a bond because you think this is a necessity for the city or for the school district or whatever it is. And so plan B is you kind of do the same as you're doing, and you keep scraping together. And, you hear that from people, but people have to understand we are in competition, as you know, with places that are not too far from us for people, for hiring people and for bringing people in and for keeping people here. And part of that reason is, and it's not a big deal, back in the old days, you kind of were born in a place and you kind of lived that place and you died that place. People are so transient now, and it's no big deal to be a couple hours away. Everybody has a cell phone. Right. Everybody, you remember when we were kids, a long distance phone call was like a major spending thing. Everybody be quiet, I'm on long distance. Now everybody gets free long distance. So being away from mom and dad for a couple hours or whatever, nobody cares. They FaceTime and all that sort of thing. Yeah. So we have to understand that's what we're up against. And we have this wonderful college at MSU. We have great schools around this area. We have Midwestern State University. There's lots of kids that aren't from Wichita Falls that come here and go there. We need to figure out a way to keep those people here when they graduate those schools, Vernon College and Midwestern State, and having a vibrant downtown and new facilities and things that we can show as an image and upkeep. That's part of that. It's
one of the other directions I want to go here is with the schools. Trey served on the Wichita Falls ISD school board for 10 years?
12 years.
12 years. And in 12 years, you had several bond issues you had put together. Mm-hmm. You passed how many in your 12 years?
2.
Okay. And one of the things that's come up, and Henry and I have talked about this before on this program and others, and that's the school situation. As far as attracting people to the city, getting people to stay here, the schools are a component of that. Obviously, Wichita Falls High School, it's a 100-year-old building, and it's got its own special set of problems as a facility. Ryder High School, I think its biggest problem is it's just too small now. The student body has well outgrown.
And it was built in 1961 as well. It is a dated building as well.
It is. But its biggest problem, I guess, is just space. They've run out of room. They've got far more students than they started with.
That part of town has grown exponentially since Ryder High School was built.
And they probably didn't really anticipate that it would grow as rapidly as it did.
To the southwest especially.
Right. Exactly. So we look at building new schools as a component of attracting families here. That's Henry has stated that's one of the things that people look at. They look at the schools as a component of why they want to move to a community. Trey, from your perspective on the school board, what has been the biggest hurdle to clear in getting new schools? Obviously, the voters have to approve a bond issue,
Right.
but what do you think the biggest hurdle is to that, to getting that component done?
Well, the biggest hurdle that I've ever faced is similar to a lot of the hurdles that the city's going to face. Is it's been good enough. The attitude, it's been good enough. And the fact of the matter is, it's not good enough. It's not. We're not retained. We're not growing. You know, there's more people moving to Texas from all over. I mean, Texas is like the fastest growing state in the country in the union, and we're not growing in Wichita Falls, and we haven't grown. And part of that is because there's been a whole lot of that good enough attitude.
Right. I was good enough for me.
Exactly.
Right.
There
What,
was
50 years ago?
there was a lot of money in Wichita Falls at one time. People don't understand the amount of wealth, oil wealth that was in Wichita Falls. That's gone. I mean, there's a little bit of that here, but it's not the same as it used to be. People are not attracted to Wichita Falls because of wealth anymore.
It's not what it was 50 years ago.
And by the way, people, our kids, they're not like us. They don't care about stuff as much. They care about experiences. That's one thing I do respect about the millennial generation. I like the fact, our whole thing was you buy a house, you get stuff. You move to the suburbs, you whatever, you get stuff. These kids like to have experiences. They don't care about spending all their money on stuff. And that's why some of your cities that are growing and moving and that sort of thing, they provide experiences.
Yeah. Well, we're from the generation. We're from the generation of he who dies with the most toys wins.
Well, I think
biggest
that
house,
was,
biggest boat.
That was I think that we learned that from our parents. Our parents, the baby boomer was the first generation of that.
Right.
And we're the Gen X. Imagine you're Gen X as well. We're all Gen X. And so we're part of that where we still had some of that. But the new kids coming up, they're into more experiences.
And that's why,
you have to
go back
that.
to downtown for a second. That's why downtown is so important, because living or working downtown is an experience.
That's right.
Unlike living in a neighborhood somewhere. You can walk around and just randomly meet up with people, people you know, people you don't, and it enriches your life in a way that you cannot get in an old traditional neighborhood type where you only see the same people over and over. And our downtown has already started to become that with the influx of coffee shops and restaurants and bars. And so that's why we need to encourage more development like that.
Well, back to the business growth side of things. Okay, let's say all 7 of these bond issues pass for the city of Wichita Falls, all 7 of them, including the Municipal Center. That's hard to say this morning. Municipal Center. Let's say all 7 of these pass. Okay, then at some point in the very near future, the Wichita Falls ISD is going to have to look again at building either one large new high school or 2 fairly large high schools to accommodate and replace Wichita Falls High School and Ryder High School. So in terms of business growth, what do we need to look at in terms of schools to help attract businesses here? Or how would that work to attract businesses to Wichita Falls? Is there a component there for that?
Well, it does. Everything is connected to everything else, and that's what we've got to remember. And so a business looking at Wichita Falls from the outside doesn't necessarily care about the quality of the school facilities themselves, but what a quality facility does for the community, they certainly would care. And so we know that when people are looking at Wichita Falls or anywhere as a possible place to move, they're looking at schools, they're looking at downtowns, recreation, housing. Those are typically the types of things that people look for. And so if good schools help us attract more people to live here, that's where the business community comes in and says, that's why it's important to me, because I just need the workforce. We could give a company $10 million today to come here, but if they don't feel like they can find the workforce, they're not coming because they're not going to be successful. And so having quality facilities that help us sell this city and build our image around and create a better educational outcome, that's very important to the business community. And I'm glad you mentioned earlier what other communities are doing. We are competing with cities that are doing this. And it costs money, but a lot of these people that are telling me, well, we're going to have a school bond election coming up soon, and we're just, well, for one, I didn't hear anybody screaming when we passed the jail bond last year. Everybody was crazily quiet about that deal. And second, people are telling me Our taxes are already high. Well, here's the deal. I'd rather live in a community with high taxes that was a great city than one that wasn't, okay? And if we want to be a great city, and we can be that, and get rid of this, well, that's just Wichita Falls attitude, we've got to pass this stuff, right?
Well, and also,
there's no doubt about it.
And you have to look at your taxes. That's an investment. You have to look at it as an investment. I mean, yeah, the taxes are high. Everybody thinks they should pay for less taxes. But in the same token, with those taxes, and you have to break it down, what is it going to really cost you? What is it going to cost you as a household? And it's usually not nearly as much as you think. You hear the word taxing. Oh, no, taxes are going up. But then you look at it, what's that investment in the city? And then if you do something for a living and your job revolves around people in the city providing services to the city or goods to people in the city, or as a public servant, that's an investment in your city. And the more people you can bring in, the better your business is going to thrive. Once again, if you're a public servant, the more likely you can make more money. So all of that stuff is investment, but you have to put the investment in first. You can't always wait for it to happen and then I'll pay.
Right.
It's just how it works.
I tell you, Wichita Falls, I think, turned a corner in the last 4 or 5 years. And this is where I think we turned a corner. I've talked to people in the restaurant business here who are having to pay cooks in their kitchen $10, $11, $12 an hour to retain them. There was a time not too many years ago in Wichita Falls, Texas, where you could pay almost anybody in a restaurant whatever the minimum wage was at that time, and they'd stay, and they might go down the road for 10 cents an hour more if somebody offered them a dime more. Those days are gone. Now the competitive part of it has grown, and part of this is the lack of a healthy workforce. We just don't have the people. So in order to retain the people they have, they're having to pay more wages. As we become more competitive, as we grow, that's also going to grow, I think, wages in the city too. Am I on the right track?
Yeah,
there, Henry?
we're already stretched thin, and one of the ways, obviously, that you can attract more workers is to raise pay or increase benefits, make it better to work where at your company. And that's good for the economy.
You give them a reason to come and a reason to stay.
It's not always great for the business, but that's a cost of doing business, right? And in most businesses, labor is one of the, if not the highest expense.
The highest expense,
but it's great. Yeah. Our cost of living here is very, very low. I mean, we always rank in the top 10 for cities our size across the country in terms of cost of living.
Right.
Wages need to keep up with that so people can take advantage of that low cost of living. And so to see wages go up, it's not necessarily a bad thing. That's a good thing because people will have more money to spend. And the more people spend here and the more we can get people from the outside moving here or visiting here and spending their money, that generates more sales taxes, which helps our city do more road projects, for example. Yeah. And the city's tax base has not grown much over the last 50 years, although the last 4 or 5 months of sales tax collections are up against last year. And so it's a short trend to look at, and hopefully that'll continue.
Oh, I think there's a little more confidence in the economy too this year than it was last year or the year before, and certainly more than we had in the last 5 or 6 years previous. Trey, I think the Career and Education Center that the school district built is probably the best investment the Wichita Falls ISD has made in a long time.
Well, the people of Wichita Falls made in a long time,
right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah,
but it was the right plan at the right time. And I think it's going to pay dividends for us. It takes time to see that payback come from that. Obviously, there's a going to have a couple of graduating classes go through there to start to see the real benefits of that. But if it helps us retain people, in terms of a school bonds, for example, let's say we get through this, we pass all these bonds, we get 2 years down the road, and the Wichita Falls ISD comes back to the drawing board with another school bond plan. Trey, in your opinion, based on your experience in the district and your experience as a business owner and how this may impact businesses, not just your business, but other businesses in the city, what do you think is the best plan there? Is it one school? Is it 2 schools?
Well, I've never been a one school guy personally, but that's not going to be my decision. So I'll just kind of watch and see. We'll see what the community wants. Right now, I think there are some focus groups that are being held to talk about, not necessarily a school bond, but what does the school district want to look like in the future?
Yeah.
And that's going on right this minute. So, like I said, I've never been a one school person. I like multiple schools.
I'm not either. I think you got to do
that's
two.
just a personal opinion. But the most important thing is, as a taxpayer, which, by the way, I don't even get to vote, and I'm still a taxpayer now because I don't live in Wichita Falls anymore, but I pay at 401 and 403 North Scott. If you ever want to think that don't pay taxes, look at the tax rolls there and find out if I don't pay taxes there.
Definitely.
But you have to understand, you can't keep worrying about, well, what if somebody else comes and what if somebody else comes? Do what you think is right. Pass what you think is right now, and then worry about the future in the future. Because you got to start seeing dividends paying on it. And if every time a bond comes up, you go, well, the next thing, somebody else is going to want this and somebody else, they may. But if this is the right thing, vote for it. Let's get it passed.
And I think attitudes have changed. One of my favorite things about the CEC Center, and this goes for the new airport terminal as well, and the transportation center, we didn't have any new construction here in the public sector for a long time. And I think now people are starting to realize, look, Wichita Falls can be great. We can have nice things. We don't have to settle for that attitude that this is just Wichita Falls and we're never going to have anything and it's never going to change. We, as citizens here, whether you're in the city limits or not, we should demand excellence out of our leadership. And so that CEC Center, not only is it going to transform how we prepare kids for the workforce, but that ought to be a model for what our facilities look like in the future as well. And it's not just looks, it's so much more functional than any of our other schools. And so we ought to demand that sort of excellence, because when we go to other cities and we see great schools or a great downtown or whatever, good park system or anything, one, we're like, okay, that city's got it going on. They got it figured out. And two, we're envious. And so we should demand that now and say, look, Wichita Falls, if we're proud of this place, we need to make it better. And it drives me nuts when people talk about how much they love this place, but then at the same time, they're okay with Wichita Falls High School having rat traps in the classroom and holes in the floor where you can see the basement because this is just Wichita Falls. It doesn't make sense.
Well, how many students go to Old High, as we call it, only because mom and dad went there and grandma and grandpa went there, and by golly, they're going to go there.
Well, the thing about Old High and all of them, they have great curriculum, though. That's a good reason to go. It's just we need to have better facilities. There's no doubt. But what I'm saying is, I don't ever want to sell short the curriculum and the great work that's going on there. But those kids deserve better facilities for that to happen in. And quite frankly, that costs money. It's just like when the city does a bond, or you always need to look at a bond. And I've done a million bond talks. You have to look at a bond as like a home equity loan. If you're gonna remodel your house, right? Most people don't remodel their house purely out of savings account. It'd take you years and years and years to save. And by the way, the dog needed shots this month, or the car broke down and we need new tires on this, or kid goes off to college or whatever. So saving is a hard thing to do, and you do everything you can, but also you don't want to deplete your savings completely away. You want to have something in reserve. You have to by law, but you also want to. So if you want to remodel, if the average person wants to remodel their home, they have to go get a home equity loan. Getting a bond is the same thing as a home equity loan. You go get a loan to get the money to remodel your home. But now your home is worth more. And it's the same thing with bonds. Once you spend the money on whether it's schools or the city things, once that's done, your city now, your school district is worth more. And you've made that investment. And as a taxpayer, you are an owner of that school, of those schools, of that city. You are an owner, and you have to look at things like that. You're part of the ownership. Guys,
we're running out of time here, so real quick, I want to wrap up here. Trey, I want to thank you for being a part of the program today.
Thanks a lot.
Again, the bond election, the Wichita Falls bond proposal election coming up May 5th. Henry, tell people how they can find out more about it.
Sure, there's a couple of ways. Number one, you can visit fallsfuture.com. There's information about all 7 propositions, voting information, cost breakdowns, links to some other resources where you can find info. And then we're having an event. You can find the details about it at fallsfuture.com as well. On April 19th, we're holding the Falls Future Forum at the Impact. And the purpose of this event is twofold. We've been working on a new strategy for growth for Wichita Falls, and it's almost complete. And at this luncheon, we will unveil a sneak peek at the new strategy, and we'll talk about how these propositions help us get there. And so, again, it's fallsfuture.com. You can find all the info that you need.
If they have other questions about city-related issues, whether it's business, growth, whatever the questions may be, obviously the chamber can answer a lot of those questions. How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, just call me at the chamber anytime, 723-2741.
All right. You've been listening to and watching the Voice of Wichita Falls. Thanks very much, guys, for being here, and we'll see you again next week. Stay safe.